Yes. Nice.
Hey,
Hello,
okay.
sir. How are you?
Back again. I'm back. I'm back.
Good. It's nice to see you there. All right. Well,
Yeah,
I'm gonna.
the storm.
Yeah, we're gonna just briefly get this out of the way right now. I'm gonna defer to Mr. Planas and to Marty discuss about Sigan Stephen LaBounta very quickly, and I think it's really important because he is very special to us. He is part of the Hall of Fame. So, Mr. Planas, a few words, and then Mr. Zaninovich, would you please say something as well?
Most people know that I came out of Steve LaBounta and Tom Kelly's school in Fresno way back in the 60s. And we died. All good thoughts. That, like you said, we're all getting old, and just the way it goes. I've gotten calls that there have been 4 or 5 of the black belts and friends that have died in the last few days, just a few days. Amazing, you know. But they say that's the way the ball bounces or the way it goes. So I love him, miss him, and that's it.
You have some words?
Yeah, I do. Sigan LaBounta was special to us. I grew up underneath the LaBounta lineage with David Jimenez, Mr. Jimenez, and Mr. Duffy and the whole group there. And we had a lot of great memories in the gatherings, the Sigan. He was, friend, brother, dad. He was always there. So, he's missed. A lot of love I have for him, and just like everyone else, thinking about him a lot.
All right. Thank you very much, gentlemen. I appreciate that. Let us now. So, my name is Paul Casey. Welcome to the Kempo Karate Hall of Fame educational video series. Each segment basically focuses on a Kempo Karate Hall of Fame member, their contributions to Kempo, and then we discuss many aspects of their life. These individuals are chosen by their peers. So, with no further ado, we are glad to have with us today Senior Master of the Arts, Richard Huk Planas. Huk, we're glad to have you here, sir. And also a Master of the Arts, Marty Zaninovich. Gentlemen, thank you and welcome to the Kempo Karate Hall of Fame.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you for having us.
Okay, so we're going to start with some questions here. We're going to start off with, first of all, I'm going to focus on asking some historical things and allow that to go forward. So we're going to go now with Mr. Planas. Can you give us a little bit of background on your history and the evolution of your journey in Kempo, starting out when you first came into the martial arts and basically up to today?
Well, I always generally start with the Kempo, even though, being Filipino and stuff and studying some of the Filipino arts, just touching on it very little when I was a kid and stuff with my dad and traveling around the Filipino labor camps and all that. Well, I really got introduced to it. I said, yeah, he said, in the Filipino martial arts? I said, well, I played with it, but not really. Yeah, more interested in it, and I started going down the dance. I was, a musician, a professional musician at the time, semi-professional, a guitar player, played in the band. Students, or not students, but eventually, one of my friends in high school and college, Cletus Hammock, came in and says, I want to start taking karate. We passed a karate school, and it was a Shotokan school. And I said, I'll go ahead. I'm not going to mess up my hands and make it useless beads out of them where I can't play the guitar and all that stuff. So I didn't see him for a long time. And then he came into a dance we were playing, and he says, where you been? So I didn't know there was another school. Yeah, we're going to a Kempo school. Kenpo, what's that? I just knew, I didn't know this other school was a Shotokan school. It was Bob Halliburton's Kempo school. Shotokan school. So we went there, and I walked in, and I saw a lot of my musician friends. I said, whoa, hey, what are you guys doing here? Oh, we're studying. I said, but you're not messing up your hands? They said, oh, no, we don't have to do that. I said, so they told me all about it. And said, yeah, I did, and I've been at it ever since. But I tell people, it was funny. Cletus, my friend that started me, quit at Brown. You know, he got to Brown, and that's all he cared about, and learned enough. So, you know, he quit, and I went on, and the rest is history, as they say.
Marty, why don't you give us a little bit of your background of your history of Kempo and how you got involved with the martial arts?
I was always in wrestling and judo in grade school and then coming up, and it never seemed like it was really active enough for me. Where my parents lived in Dinuba, there was a karate school that opened up, and it was Kempo karate, and I didn't know what Kempo was from anything, you know. So I went in there and started studying, and found out it was under the head instructor David Menace, and then we were, you know, in the LaBounta lineage, which I had no clue what that was at the time. And it was a spirited, high energy group that just put a hook in me, and I couldn't get enough of it. Get a hold of you know, Huk Planas, and I had no idea who the man was. You know, from that point, and then we got a hold of him, and I didn't know he was from Dinuba originally. And the journey started after that. My Filipino instruction started a little bit later. Mr. Planas was really thoroughly enjoying the heck out of it, and then I started studying with his brother Ed, and he studied under a Caboan system. He was an instructor under that. I still couldn't get enough, and then I asked, you know, and the blessings were there, and from that day forward, you know, like Mr. Planas said, the rest is history, and it's been a great journey all the way through. So I mean, I've been very blessed to do that. I also study with Grandmaster Nene Gapakayan in the Bolitnawak system, which is interesting too. I was telling Mr. Planas earlier, I said, you know, we get my first lesson since this COVID deal started tomorrow. He says, but we got to wear a mask. He's the old type Filipino that we still go in the park. So it's a one-on-one with a mask and maybe a hazmat suit, who knows, but it should be fun.
You know, Marty, you had told in the discussions we've had in the past, you discussed a little bit about the different instructors you've worked with. What about the different systems of the martial arts that you've been exposed to?
The major martial arts I've been exposed to is my system, and with Mr. Planas, I'm going to age myself, but probably 40 years-ish. Been with Guru Dan Inosanto Academy, off and on, in the stick system he did for a couple years there, maybe a little bit more, I lose track. And then with the Bolitnawak, I've been studying with Grandmaster Nene for about 7 years. More. We had Filipino martial arts, I've done the Silat, and I've done the Jeet Kune Do, and I'm certified in all of them.
Can you, Mr. Planas, can we talk about a little bit about the evolution of Kempo?
That's what Kenpo is based on. What we say is, all my students know what we call the definition of Kenpo. Kenpo is a study of motion based on rules and principles. You can't move your little finger without knowing why or shouldn't know, or should know why and how come you're doing this. A lot of people just doing what we call meaningless motion. You're doing that move, but you don't know what or why it is or why you're doing it or whatever. I don't believe in category completion, but I said you just look at the forms and the way things are laid out. You'll got to say there's category completion. Like the forms, what are the ones and the twos? That's your basics forms. What are the threes up? 3, 4, 5, and 6 are your technique forms. Okay, what is 3? All grabs. Oh, I guess the category is grabs. What is 4? Kicks and punches. Oh, I guess the category is kicks and punches. What is 5? Takedowns. Oh, I guess the category is takedowns. What is 6? Weapons. Oh, I guess the category is weapons. Now, in what order? Gun, knife, and club all mixed up? No. You do one, complete it, then you move to another, and you complete it, then you move to another and complete it. So, and if you just look at, like we do the finger set, kicks, pokes, hooks, slices, all mixed up? No, you do all the pokes, all the hooks, all the slices, all the whips, you know, in order, and then you change categories. You know, it's so simple to see that everything's laid out in categories, you know, but I sort of lost my train of thought on that, but I hope, you know, I got something through.
Marty? No comment.
Well,
Speechless for once.
you know, I follow under his tutelage on it, and I still question for him as we go, and we grow. I mean, it's a beautiful art that it is laid out very systematically that allow you to grow and build some strong foundations in the rules and principles of motion. And I utilize it in the other arts I do too. You know, it's a good sounding board to compare.
Well, what should be the emphasis then, I guess, or the differences in Kempo?
The emphasis in Kempo to the other arts?
Yes.
You know, in the Kempo, obviously we're empty hand. The weapons that we do in the Kempo are basic, and I'll leave it at that. I like the Filipino arts for the weapons, the thought processes, the principles that they do follow, to be aware of what's coming next, to be able to go into the depths of the art. And it's not just a stick art. It's stick, it's knife, it's empty hand, it's flexible weapons. And I think a lot of people have the misconception that it's just a one dimension, two dimension type art. At the Academy, we go through 12 areas of learning the Filipino arts, and it is a full covered category. And
Dan told me a story, Inosanto, about being in the Philippines, and when he went over there to study some things, he says, he was working with a guy, and he says, oh, that's neat. He said, what do you call that? What's the name of that? He said, what do you mean? He said, what's it? Well, it's got to have a name. What is that? He said, oh, it's got no name. Just do it. And he said, no, well, it's got to have a name because he used to Kempo. Dan comes from Kempo. It's got to have a name. He said, no, it's just, so you do something else, and he said, oh, that's good. That's neat. He said, what's the name of that? And the guy says, it's got no name. It's just do it. And Dan kept just doing that. So he says, the old man, whoever he was working with, I can't remember who it was, but, he was outside, and he said, hey, wait a minute. He said, look over there. You see that tree? You see that tree over there? What's the name of that tree? What's the name of that tree? What's the name of that tree? He said, oh, I don't know. He said, but you see him, don't you? He said, that's it. Just see it and do it. Don't have to do that. But he just used to the terminology and the things, and that's the thing. And I tell people, a lot of people from the Filipino arts, different systems, came to us a lot of times and say, hey, we know you guys, Kempo guys, are big on terminology. He says, so we do this. He says, what would you call this? I said, do it again. And he says, well, I would call it this. Oh, that's good. We like that. We'll use that. So we gave, a lot of terminology to some of these guys through the Kempo principles of motion, just so simple, but it's got, a name is what you relate things to.
When we go through the arts in the Filipino arts, it's, and you're so right, Supo, when Guru Dan's talking about it, you do a single stick flow drill, and that flow drill he may show you today, and he may not show that same flow drill for another 5 years, 10 years, but he's showing you different flow drills so you won't get stuck following and chasing a pattern versus learning how to flow and getting that cognitive flowing. It's unconscious competence, they say, versus cognitive understanding. It's like turning on a light switch and knowing it's going to work, or worried about every little piece and detail of it. Oh, it's so funny. And that's true. I started, I got the motions, from Mr. Planas, and I'd go down to the Academy and I'd come back and I'd be working with Sifu again, and I'm asking him these things, and he said, where do you think I got it from? It was funny. It was really funny, but it was great. I still love it.
When coming up in the martial arts as Mr. Planas, and obviously you, Mr. Zaninovich, a lot of it was personal in the school situation. What about today's new technology, and also under the circumstances that we're faced right now of the use of the internet?
Okay, my feelings on that, I think it's good for review. It's good for critique if you've been working with that student before. It's hard to get that feel, communicated across the wavelength, so to speak. It's pretty much a hands-on art, and the more I get into it, the more I see that the feel and the touch is so important to relate to it, and getting that zoning, so it's not a anticipated move. It's a reaction. Like Huk Planas always told us, you got to learn how to read. Once you can read, you'll start getting a dialogue going with the flow, and it's so true. But that's that's the biggest difference that I've had to work with. And plus, you don't have a body that size unless you're working with somebody all the time in front of you.
Mr. Planas, your thoughts?
The internet, you can look on the internet now. In fact, I tell my students and a lot of students, I says, take a look on the internet and look at this and tell me what's wrong with it. And the old man used to do that, Mr. Parker. He would bring in books or something and say, here's a new Black Belt magazine, look at this and tell me what's wrong, what's not right with this, So you'd look at it and say, oh, well, this, yeah. That's because you knew rules and principles and whatever. That's the thing now is, and I've said it for many years. I said, the problem is not just Kenpo, it's every system. I've seen it with every system that I've taken a look at is qualified instructors, and that's basically the big problem.
Why is that? Is it because of, since the passing of Mr. Parker, has it been a break? Is it?
Well, that's basically right. But ask any of these guys out there running around the world teaching, who is their instructor? Oh, I don't have one. I don't need one. I'm afraid you do. Because you're breaking every rule in the book. You're doing things, and you told me not to sugarcoat, and I'm not. And I said, the fault is with Ed Parker. Ed Parker led a lot of people to believe and let people say that you can tell people I'm your teacher and I'm teaching you, which he really wasn't, because there's a lot of guys out there that can't explain one rule or principle to you and whatever, but they all claim to be students of Ed Parker's. A lot of them, And I said, well, how come we don't teach the rules and principles then? And that's the thing. I don't really like to really jump in that, but unless somebody really pins me down, but that's the problem. So, like how, look at this. Look at the list of 10th degrees in Kempo, and say how many 10th degrees are there in other systems? None, one maybe. But in Kempo, people forget that there's a rank and a title that goes with it. The rank has a title, I've told a lot of people this in different tests that I've been invited to. I said, don't forget the title you're giving this guy. You're calling him professor, senior professor, whatever, and they can't profess nothing. They can't move without breaking rules and principles and whatever, or basic beginner stuff of Kenpo. It's amazing to me.
You find now you've had your path has been wide and long, and you've traveled to many destinations to teach Kempo. What are the differences you have found domestically versus internationally?
Well, it all depends on the teacher. First of all, there are many roads and many camps out there. There's camps or lineage lines, we'll call them, that I will never go to. I will never be invited or go there, and they won't be invited to mine. Some of them do, but we have an open door policy to do that. But whatever the reason is, they want to do it their way, and that's it. They don't have any other thoughts on it. I had a call. In fact, I had a call just last week from a guy from another system, Kempo line. I'll just say Tracy line in Kentucky that wanted to do something or whatever. And I told him, well, video stuff. I said, no, I don't believe in that. You got to have hands-on and be on the mat with somebody so I can correct you and not let you do this and that and whatever and explain it fully to you. I said, so when all this COVID stuff is over, we might be able to do something. So we said, okay. And another story that goes along with that is a good while back, a few years ago maybe, I had a call from Canada. And I says, Mr. Planas, can I ask you a question? I said, yeah. He said, I want to know how this technique goes. He says, I asked this guy how to do it, and he said this. And then I asked this guy, and he said that. And then I went through a whole long list of people. And he says, and I know that you helped write the book. So I want to ask you, how does it go? So I just wrote him back a question. I said, if you know that, how come you asked me last? And he just never came back, never replied, never nothing. It embarrassed him or whatever. But I said, if you know that, why do you ask me last? Understand?
Well, let's visit
So
that subject. When the techniques were being written, developed, and put in a textual context, you were one of the main people. You and Mr. Kelly and Mr. Parker. So why don't you tell us about that? How that developed, how that evolved?
Well, the old man, when we got to Pasadena, me and Tom, the old man had the orange belt done and just started the purple. And so we sat down and he says, here's what we're doing. So, oh, okay, So he says, here's what we want to do. So, we need to complete this. And I said, okay, so you got an outline. He said, well, yeah, just like everything's laid out in category completions and whatever, you got an outline, like you outline a sentence or whatever. So he says, okay, so we want to show this, and this about this. Then we jump to this category, we want to show this, and this about this. We said, okay, so we set up Friday, Saturday night, sometimes Sundays, and late night in the Pasadena school and put the stuff together. And it was all basically, it was called Big Red or the manual. With the new system, a lot of people call it, the old guys. A lot of them didn't want to take the time to learn it because they knew what it was. And it's true, really. It's true. It's marketing. And that's, the old man was in business. Like anybody that puts up a sign, karate, open for business, I got to cut the nut, I got to pay the bill, I got to do everything else. So that's what it was based on, You got to make the money to pay the bills and whatever. So that's what the system was basically put together for, even though it was good. But I'd say the first thing after, the manual was done, we put a lot of work in that and a lot of time, few years, whatever. I can't remember when we started it. Late 60s finished. No, I'm terrible on dates, but
Marty, you can always jump in and help. Please do.
He doesn't know this. This before Marty. This before.
Yeah, it was before me.
He may have heard the story from you, so he checked it down on his little notes.
Yeah, no, I've heard the story and I've lived by the story, and it worked for me.
Yeah.
When you were creating the book.
Garbage can.
Yeah, when you were creating the red book, we'll just use that. And you were creating the techniques. Did you decide there were certain techniques that would stay in the book, and then there was others that would not stay in the book? Some were eliminated, some were kept,
everything was just,
some were modified.
No, people eliminated them. People, every school I traveled to around the country, I look at their lists and I say, oh, this is not there. This is, I put that in optional, or I did this, or I took that out. Well, that's their call. That's their choice. They can teach it and do it the way they want it. But again, if the old man didn't jump on them and say, no, you've got to teach it, But
were there certain things that he was adamant about?
Put his foot down.
Yeah, were there certain things that he was really adamant about?
Yeah, but not the right things, in my opinion. I got in trouble with the old man quite a few times for going and teaching seminars and teaching stuff that he didn't want me to teach. So I got reamed out when I got back. So whenever I would travel, there was one at a time, the old man and me were the only ones traveling around doing seminars.
Okay.
And so I would clear it with him. I said, okay, I'm going here next week. Is there anything you don't want this to show or people to know? And he said, no, teach them anything. And then others say, no, don't do this, don't do that. Okay. So
was there a formula, Mr. Planas, was there a formula? Like, for example, you had a sort of a set. Was there a formula or a set template that he would use when he taught, and then he would differentiate or deviate or respond to certain questions? But there was always something that he basically covered.
Well, I'll just say this. I tell people all the time, the old man quit teaching back in the late 60s. Well, what do you mean? He was, and I said, no, he wasn't really teaching. He was counting cadence. Counting cadence. You know what that is?
Yes, sir.
That's like a drill instructor. You left, you left, you left, right, left, to the rear, march. You know, to the right flank, march. He's just drilling you, running you through all kinds of stuff that you already know. He's not teaching anything. You know, so he didn't want to teach. He quit teaching, and I know why, and I sort of agree with it. You know, he told me, you know, he says, Huck, he says, we've sat in his hotel rooms and schools and stuff many times. He says, Huck, he says, I don't care if anybody ever learns this system. I'm tired of making monsters. Because every time I bust my butt to teach somebody and make them learn something, they turn around and crap on me or whatever. So I'm not going to have that happen anymore. You know, so you got to be real bitter about that. So, you know, he would tell people, well, you can say I'm your teacher, but really I'm not teaching nothing. And show me something, all right? That's what I tell people, like I said. Show me something that goes with the jives with the rules and principles of Kempo that the old man showed you, you know, and most of them can't do it.
Let me ask you this then.
The time frame.
Yes. Why is it then so many people claim to have Ed Parker as a teacher?
Credibility. Gives them credibility. Just like people, after the old man died, every association out there called me. We want you to be with us. What for? Give them credibility because they knew who I was. You know, I was the state-of-the-art director was my title. You know, I was my job to go around the country and all the different schools and teach the art in Big Red to all the different schools, but nobody else knew it. Nobody else knew it. Ed Parker didn't know it. He didn't have to. It was my job to know it. You understand that?
Yes, sir, I do. Yeah. Let me say this much.
Now,
Marty, let's get Marty in here real quick. Marty, let's change.
Yes, sir.
Let's change the positions. Okay. So Mr. Planas is traveling around the country with Mr. Parker, and now he's traveling around, and you're going with him at Tasia. What's it like to be with Mr. Planas?
For me, I totally enjoy being with them and hanging out in the seminars and teaching and having a good time. I'm always learning from him on the mat. When he demos, when he teaches, I'm learning something new all the time, and I can feel it when he does it to me, and it's pretty effective. But I have a great time with it, long and short of it.
Hey, Derek.
Uncle Huck. How you doing, sir?
Hey, Derek.
How you doing, Derek?
Paul, we got you on here, but you're muted. You got to unmute your own mic there, Paul.
Hey,
there you are.
Technology. That's a first for me. I've never had that situation, but hey, I'm good with it. So, so now, obviously, Mr. Planas, you've had the experience of working with Mr. Parker, learning from him and whatnot. You're now out, you're teaching. Number one thing that's requested of you at your seminars?
I don't really think there is a number one thing, you know. Like I said, you know, the lineage is lineage, you know. I have my lineage, and that's the only schools I go to. I don't go to anybody else's lineage, so they know what we do and what they do, and we just do our thing. You know, it's just understood, you know. It's not like going to somebody else's school, you know, and okay, what do you guys want to do, or what, you know, whatever, and you know, they know. Just like our Vegas camp that you were at, you know. That was all just nobody else but my lineage. And it really surprised a lot of people, and surprised me how many people were there. You know, I said, whoa, you know, and the outsiders were not allowed. We're not allowed. Everybody else's camp, just everybody and their brother come in and join, you know, be there. But mine was just strictly closed, you know.
Mr. Planas, did you have any part in any of the infinite insights that Mr. Parker wrote?
Very little, actually. I could tell you that when he did that we did one, I don't remember which one it was, one of the first ones, and we took a lot of pictures, and the pictures were with me. Well, if you look through those books now, you won't find any pictures with me, because they were replaced. Names to be mentioned, whatever, somebody looking for notoriety, and publicity, whatever, took my pictures out and put his pictures in. And I said, okay, I don't really care. I'm just surprised that the old man let him do that. But that's what happened.
Okay. Okay, because there's a couple of things that have been brought up in the past, and I want your thoughts on this. And Marty, jump in on this as well, regarding looking at the 8 considerations that that Parker wrote about in his first book. And I've had numerous conversations with people on this. The acceptance, environmental awareness, range, position, maneuvers, targets, natural weapons, defense, natural defenses. Do you have any thoughts on that? Any of that, or does that apply to any of the teachings that you have from Mr. Planas?
I think a lot of it does apply. I like a lot of the philosophies that what I've been taught from Mr. Planas on that, about proper gauging of distance, how to close the gap. I like the Filipino philosophies of it, circling and zoning. It seems to work well when you intertwine the two together. And then I also enjoy, and basing it on his teachings there, but taking a little bit different avenue getting there. I liked a lot of the Silat because it's such an off-balancing art that takes away, in our Kempo, we'd say take away the bracing angle. And it virtually applies in the Silat world too, as you're working so in tight to administer the movements on them. So I think there's a lot of validity to that.
Can you say it? Can you compare and contrast from your background some of the systems that you have been involved with to Kempo?
Yeah, they basically all are fluid type systems. The Kempo system, we utilize all lines there. So we're using circles, we're elongating them, we're rounding corners off of a square ends. In the Filipino arts, we're flowing all the time. And it's a lot of interlooping figure eights. We do straight line, linear type work. And the same thing goes with the Silat movements too. I didn't include JKD yet because JKD is so similar to a lot of the Kempo movements, with the addition of adding trapping into it also. It's a system with a lot of information that'll take you to the same result as we get in Kempo, but there's different. It's a non-boundary type system more so than a structured system like we have in Kempo. But as far as the movement goes, I like a lot of the Kempo because it fits. It can be added with the Silat, which will give it a higher intensity, I think, at certain parts, especially with breaks and takedowns. I like the Silat for that. And like you say in Silat, no two bodies can occupy one spot. Which allows you to take it to a break, and the breaks don't go to a tap out; they go to a break before the body even hits the ground. So there's a lot of great things that could intermix within all the arts.
You spent a lot of time with Mr. Inosanto, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and Mr. Inosanto is one of our Hall of Famers. He is originally at a black belt in the Kempo system. Do you feel that because you didn't spend any time obviously with Bruce Lee, so we would know that. But maybe you have. Did you spend any time with him?
Every movie they came out with, I watched them.
Okay. Thank you. With popcorn, I guess, and a drink, right?
Absolutely.
Okay. So, but do you feel that the teaching, because Inosanto spent so much time with Bruce Lee, do you think he really took it and developed his ideas, Mr. Lee's ideas for JKD based on Kempo?
I think he's added a lot of the thought process there, and I've listened to him when he talks about it, and he's had me demo Kempo in the school too, because he wanted to give everybody a feeling of what structure looks like, and then what it looks like, being done on a body. So they got to see the mix of what we do, and that was nice. Does he implement some of the Kempo into his teaching in the JKD? I think he flows with it, and he's an instructor all to his own, how he puts things together, but he gives you the analogies, and he will still give credit to Mr. Parker for what he's learned in the Kempo system and where it came from to the best of his knowledge, and then compare it with the two arts. That way you get a good flavor of an overview.
Okay, with your teachings though with Mr. Planas, Okay, now you're having that, and you're looking at principles of Kempo and the movements, okay, that you're using, and then you go to an Inosanto who had a background prior to Mr. Planas, okay, back in the early days of the 60s. Do you think that the Inosanto ideas have gone way past what Lee created, or is it still following that?
For the most part, I think he still follows it. He's implemented a little bit different trapping now. We get more trapping from Sifu Francis Fong, Wing Chun stylist out of Atlanta. And from what Mr. Inosanto has stated with that, he says his trapping is every bit as good as Mr. Lee's, or maybe a little superior at times. But as far as implementing other things from the system, he's kept it pretty much intact, but he'll let you run off the reservation with it also.
Does he adhere more to Kempo principles or not?
You know, he's not going to, and having the differences of Kempo, you know, from the world I grew up in with Mr. Planas and the world with Mr. Inosanto, it's more of a, it's a different type structure, and it's not categorized as well. I mean, we get the different terminologies for the JKD, but there's still similarities, but he'll utilize the JKD terminology. When we do a step drag, they do a slide step. You know, it's just called different names, but you're still accomplishing the same end result. So it's a hard one to answer on that, but he hasn't changed it a whole lot from what
in the teachings, obviously, Mr. Inosanto comes from a Filipino background, like Mr. Planas. I know Mr. Planas has an idea and concepts of what he wants to talk, or opinion on the use of Filipino martial arts, knives, weapons, and whatnot. And obviously, Inosanto has brought that into his teachings as well. Let's go to Mr. Planas and ask him about the use of weapons, okay? Can you talk a little bit about that, sir?
Yeah, but first of all, I want to tell another story talking about what Dan did.
Okay.
Or Marty was talking about. I'm sort of losing my train of thought on this, but you know, a lot of times what we say is this: is motion, proper motion, good motion is good motion, no matter who does it. If it's good, it's good. If it's bad because you can see something, rule of principle that it's not following or whatever. You know, so there's lots of times. You know, Dan introduced me to Silat many years ago, and a lot of times I've done seminars where I've done just strictly Silat, no Kempo. And I say, everybody says, oh man, that was good, that was great. And I says, Kempo, once again, we didn't do Kempo today. What is it? That was all Silat. What's that? I never heard of that. I said, yeah, I know. But just the motion fits, same style of motion. You know, so I said, don't burn a candle at both ends. The style of motion doesn't fit. You can't do, you know, a hard style and a soft style, and you'll go ahead to see the difference. But when the style of motion, you know, the stay on the circle, reverse the circle, cut the circle in half, and all this type of rules and principles of motion happens, then you'll see, oh, well, it's the same. Same to me, yeah, it is. Same style of motion, you know. I sort of got sidetracked, but what was your question now, Paul?
Well, the question is that, you know, that obviously in Kempo is Kempo karate, which is open hand. How do you incorporate weapons now into the Kempo principles? Because we have a very limited. We've only had we scratched. You were there when they developed the basic weapons techniques.
Yeah.
But they were they never evolved.
Anybody that has learned Kenpo had to learn the creed. I come to you with karate, empty hands. I have no weapons. I have no weapons. So I don't know how to use a weapon, basically. So when you learn empty hands, you learn rules and principles that go with empty hands, and they're fine. Then when you pick up a weapon and you say, now the rules change. The rules change. There's an old form way many years ago, done in the original Form 7, the twin dagger test. And many people cut themselves real bad doing 7 the way it was done, because when you work in Kenpo, you say, okay, if I use my right hand, the new hand has to be used outside and outside and outside and outside. And so they would make circles with the knives and the figure eights this way and go inside and slice, Corpsman, medic, I'm cut, you know. I said, you idiot, don't you know the weapon stays outside? So the weapon stays outside, doesn't come inside. So people have trouble with that when they do Kenpo until they learn it. And then after you learn it, they say, oh, that's fine. You just move naturally and move correctly. And then when you put the weapons down and go back to empty hands, you move correctly. It's just a stage of learning. But Kenpo is not, people say, I heard Kenpo is a weapons form or system. I said, well, you never learned the creed then, because the creed tells you it's not. You know, I said, if you want to learn, you know, weapons, study a weapons system. The rules and principles are totally different. And if you take the time to study it, you'll see that. You know,
what is your position on Kempo evolving?
What they call
sir, what is your position on Kempo evolving and the use of development of weapons?
This way. Many years ago, when I was still in Pasadena, the systems, a lot of systems were new. And people should remember that the old man, Parker, had Ben Largusa and his brother come into the first internationals to do a Eskrima seminar, or not seminar, but demonstration. Well, if it's not any good, why would he do that? You understand? So he wanted to do that. And then many people know and have seen it in writing that the old man asked Largusa to teach him, and Largusa refused. For whatever reason that was, don't know. Have thoughts on it, but don't know. So he refused. So it's okay, well, then heck with that. And so the old man started downplaying Eskrima, started bad-mouthing it, started doing things. And so there's lots of people used to come into the studio back in those days and want to teach. And I would beg the old man, Mr. Parker, this guy wants to teach them something. No, we're not doing it. How come? He said, you see that sign? What's it say? Ed Parker's Kenpo. If it's not Ed Parker's Kenpo, we're not doing it. So that's the only good thing that has happened since the old man died, is it let people cross-train, because a lot of this cross-training and other system study that's going on now would not be happening if the old man was still alive. Yeah.
I was under the impression that he was developing,
and then finally through the years.
I was under the impression that he was developing a curriculum for knives, a publication, and other things, but that never came to fruition. Do you think that we should be embracing that?
No, it wasn't. There was. In fact, he wanted me to do that. He wanted me to write that. And I told him, no, I don't want to do that. I do not want to do that. I don't like writing, you know, different things, but you know, that just doesn't matter. It's history gone, you know.
I understand.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about knife awareness. Why don't you bring us up to speed on that? Because Mr. Planas was talking about cross-training, and obviously you have done that. And so why don't you give us some background on your cross-training?
Okay, that two separate questions, Your Honor. So
go
here we
with the
go.
one that you want to answer first. That won't get you in trouble.
I love all you guys and miss you. So anyway, the first one is, yes, I've done a lot of cross-training, and the weapon awareness comes from the learnings and the teachings of, first of all, my first awareness of a knife and how to really utilize it was from Mr. Planas. So that's what sparked me and got me going. With Inosanto, you know, the theories, the thought process, the concepts, the applications have brought me to a new awareness level. And I see a lot of people say, you know, give me a self-defense for a knife. Teach me how to play with a knife. Teach me how to use a knife. I think the first question should be, why don't you give me some knife awareness so I have a better understanding of what and how to utilize it and what could happen to me if I get put in a situation of having to defend myself empty-handed, or if I do have a knife also, you know, fighting with a knife. Most times with a bladed type weapon, and I'm kind of running out the reservation just a little bit, it's going to come from a stealth position. It's going to be within a 3-foot zone generally, and the guy's going to come up and plunge you and on his way, and you probably won't even know you got stuck right away. But it could happen that quick, and you won't know it. So self-defense there is a tough one. If you do have the ability and the understanding of it, it's first read the situation, read the body language of what you see and it's coming up. And if you can avoid it at all costs, like they say, do it. I hear a lot of people say, well, just bring a gun. Well, the problem is, if you listen to the 21-foot rule, you can have a gun and you can still get stuck if you're not quick enough. It takes 1.7 seconds is what they figured to get from position A to position B, and that person that's going to be drawing a gun, it's going to take him that long to draw it, fire a couple shots off in him, center mass, and go. So there's a lot to be aware when it comes to the awareness, the weapon itself.
Can you give us some statistics on the occurrences with knives that maybe our viewers are not aware of?
Sure. Probably the biggest outbreak of knife usage lately has been in the London area, and it's just escalated tremendously over there. And that's phenomenal, that they're doing that. People are utilizing the knife more. Here in the States, the handgun is still the number one go-to item for the gangs, for the problems, for the deaths that occur. They say as high as 60% with blunt weapons and sharp bladed items that are being utilized now, and it's being utilized more by gangs, and a lot of people will carry a knife a lot easier than they can carry a gun around. But the problem there too lies, do you know how to draw it? Are you willing to use it if you do draw it? That's an up close and personal weapon. And like Guru Dan always told us, he says, you know what, that's the equalizer of equalizers. And he says there comes a integrity about pulling a knife and using it on somebody that's not armed.
So let's address the issue. If you were to be attacked with a knife and you do not have a knife with you.
Well, number one, hopefully you'll have enough empty hand skills to try to detour as many plunges as they can. They say you're going to get stuck 1 to 2 times every second that you stay in. Maybe more, huh, Sifu? I read that, though. I studied it. They say and as high as 5 to 7 times in 5 seconds. They said the best thing to do, if you can, is to be able to find an escape route on the way out. But you're going to be fighting your way out, and it's better to get out of there sooner than later. Hopefully you'll have empty hand skills. Hopefully, and I say hopefully, you'll be able to try to eliminate that threat.
Tell us about positioning, or maybe zoning, or follows ups, and other. What are your options, basically, that you're looking at?
If you're in a position that you have to defend yourself, and a knife is coming at you, and you do see it, you're in a better position. If you don't see it and you just see the grabbing hand come at you, which they state that's what's going to happen 70% of the time, the hand you can't see, you just have to consider it having a blade or a weapon in it, and read that situation and try to eliminate it the best you can, or stop it if you can.
So you're telling us you're going to get cut, basically.
You're going to get cut. It's like Mr. Inosanto says. He says, you know what, when you get in a knife fight, expect to get cut, but keep in your mind, hopefully you're not dead yet, and you can still fight back and get out of there if you can.
Do you feel any of you've studied through the system with Mr. Planas. You look at all the aspects of the techniques. And do you feel that, in your opinion now, do you feel that the Kempo techniques that have been presented are adequate enough to give you a good base, or can they be expanded on, or should we just trash them?
Very, very loaded question, sir.
I know that. And I need you to be direct. Stab him. Mr. Planas is waiting to hear, so let us all.
Sifu, you want this one to come out.
Please say it.
Sifu, turn off your hearing aids in a minute. Turn off your hearing aids. Okay, my opinion only, and I respect what we have, and I do teach what I've been taught, and I do pass on the art from, as Mr. Planas showed me, from the original 32s and the self-defense techniques and the forms. Okay, I got that precursor out of the way now. So
I'm with you, sir. I was there with Trejo. I grew up on the 32, all the way up to 6.
Yep. So you know where I'm coming from. So my opinion on the knife techniques is we don't really look at that opponent when he's coming in. And I'll take, the first couple. We'll just do checking the storm, for example. You're going right up in the center line and right into the heart of the guy, and you're going to hope that growing kick is going to slow him down a little bit. But if you miss and he's coming with a backup weapon with that left hand with a knife in there, you don't know. I mean, we train, it would be like Mike Tyson, training like he does, and he gets in the ring and he knocks a guy out in the first round or first 15 seconds, first minute. He had an easy day. That's the way we, in the Filipino arts, look at the weaponry. We train more for a person that's going to have that equal skill level, and if they don't, it's our lucky day. As far as the techniques themselves, okay, everybody's eating popcorn now and enjoying. Okay, Derek, watch that, brother. Okay, as far as the techniques that we do use, I question them. I'm not a real fan of them. I'll teach them, but
let me stop you there. Stop there. I question them. I'm not a fan of them. Why?
When you promised you were going to put an 800-pound gorilla on me on this one, you weren't kidding. I feel one on each shoulder. Thanks, Paul.
You're welcome. If you can't answer it, I can
we're
always
breaking rules and principles like Mr. Planas. No, we're breaking rules and principles on that when we're doing it, and we don't take away the weapon until later in the technique, which is taboo. We want to get in there, control it, disarm it, and then finish off the opponent, as we see fit or needed for the time. We're going up the circle a lot, running into a backup weapon in our Kempo. To me, we're wasting a lot of time, but it was, taught originally for people that don't really know the weapon system to give them some type of understanding of a weapon coming at you. I see the differences now, and I believe that what we have can be bettered and give it a different flavor of how to disarm it and utilize.
So let's go and let's ask the man who wrote the technique for the Red Book, Mr. Planas. What is your thoughts on?
Well, don't say that I wrote the Red Book. I helped to write the Red Book, but the old man had his ideas of what he wanted to show, and I said, okay, we can do that, But I said, hey, man, it's like I say, it would be. There's different word, but very, very much luck. Very much luck. If any of that stuff would actually work very good. And we say like a lot of the systems, we try not to rely on luck. You don't rely on luck. You want to, say this is the best thing there is, and if I screw up, it's me. It's not just like, I related to shooting. I shot combat and competition. I've shot everything you can shoot in competition. And I've always taken my guns out to the range, put them on the rest, and sighted them in and say, hey, this gun is right on. If I miss, it's not the gun, it's me. You understand?
Sure. Let me ask you this, sir.
Dead on.
You also have a background in making knives. So as a person that uses a knife, you also know what factors in the development. I mean, obviously the Hibbins are on here today. They are listening to this conversation. What is your takeaway from the techniques that are in the original Red Book? How could they be improved upon?
Well, like I said, they don't follow the weapons rules and principles. A lot of the systems, martial arts, karate systems, like if you study a hard style, like Shotokan or whatever, you'll see that their hand techniques are exactly the same as their weapons techniques. There's no difference. It's not if we do it this way against a weapon, But like I said, the weapons rules change. When you move against a weapon, you say, hey, that's a problem here. And I can't do it the same way. So I want to do it as best as possible. And you have to train to do that. You know,
would you then
that's what a lot of
scrap?
people don't do. You know, they
Would you scrap the limited number of weapons techniques in the Kempo journal? Would you scrap that and rethink that, rewrite them, somehow? We're looking at
some
somebody's
of
life.
them, well, not really scrap. Not really scrap. That's the thing. That's what I talk about. I said, okay, realize 6 is last. 6 is the weapons form. Why? Because you got to be damn good to take on a weapon without getting killed. Okay. So we're teaching you a lot of things. And first of all, I have seen very few people who actually do the complete moves in the form of Form 6 against the, you know, the knife stuff. The very first technique is a good example of that. There's so many moves left out, but it relies on, I put it this way too, I don't want to get sidetracked, but in the not weapons, but in the technique forms, 3F, 3 is the first technique form, 3, 4, 5, and 6. There's always something wrong with the first technique. So you're supposed to figure out, what am I doing wrong here? What am I breaking rules and principles for when I do this? So when you're doing 6 and you're doing the very first glancing lance technique, you're screwing around with minors that cannot be done. Nobody can do that effectively and correctly, and it requires pinpoint accuracy and pinpoint lockup, which nobody can do at full speed. So it's only there to show you, look, you can do this, but I would suggest leaving it out. I would suggest leaving it out. So we do that, and we apply when I show the stuff. Here's what it's supposed to be. Here's the way I would do it, based on the Filipino blade system. See? And that's just it. You know?
What are your thoughts on that, Marty?
I'm in total agreement with that. It's well, number one, that's what he taught me. Number two, it follows its suit what I've learned over at the Inosanto Academy and from others that have come in there. So it's I totally agree with them on that.
Okay. How would you? Okay, you have students, and as I'm going to use Mr. Planas' word, pinpoint accuracy, perfect timing. Well, that you're taking into our assumption there, which I hate to use a word like that. Okay, you're now confronted. The man has a knife. Is he just going to lunge at you?
In the perfect world, where you
how the techniques are written.
Okay, but I'm talking about using it in real life.
You did.
What's happening? What happens today when you're confronted with an assailant? He has a knife. Obviously, he's in an agitated state. It's very personal. He's going to attack you. What is the attack that you're probably going to see? Is he going to do just a lunge? Is he just going to come over with a one?
Well, I've done that. I was leaving New Orleans one time.
Good. Let's hear this one.
To do a seminar, and I had some training knives in my bag. So I got stopped at the X-ray thing, and they opened the bag, and they said, "Oh, what's this?" I said, "Those are training knives." "Well, what do you do with those?" I said, "Well, I'm a martial arts instructor. I teach, defense against, guns, knives, club, all this different stuff and whatever." Said, "Oh," so she handed me, it was a girl. She handed me the knife. She said, "Show me." I said, No. I said, "I teach use of too, but basically defense." So I handed her back the knife, and I said, "You have to attack me." So she came up behind the counter with the X-ray machine, She said, "How do you want me to do it?" I said, "I don't care. How would you do it?" She said, "Like this?" I said, "Yeah, how else?" "Like this? How else?" "Like this, baby? How else?" "Like this?" And what she finally came up with is what's called in the system Cinco Terro, 5 angles. That's all you're ever going to run into in the street, the basic 5 angles. So I said, "Okay, come at me." "How?" I said, "I don't care. Do whatever you want." And she did. So I took, trapped, locked, knocked, took her down. People started running over. No, she said, "Oh, no, it's okay, it's okay." He's an instructor. He's showing her what to do. So show me something else. So I did a little demo for her. So no, that's fine. Okay, so I got to get my plane. So I leave. Every stop, I was going to Europe. Every stop, I got stopped, pulled out a line, and searched. I says, what is this? So I asked him, I said, hey, is there something on my ticket that says for you to do this? He said, yeah, you got flagged in New Orleans. Because of what I did in New Orleans, you know, they stopped me every place, you know, and I'm just telling the truth. I was leaving Greece years ago, and I was pissed off, you know. One of the little girls there asking me questions. She said, you got any weapons on you or whatever? And I said, well, what do you call a weapon? She said, oh, you know, knives. I said, no, what about pens and pencils? I had a pen in my pocket. I said, you know, I could kill you with this pencil. And it's true. It happened. You know, years ago, an FBI agent was arresting a guy, pulled a pen out of his jacket and shoved his throat and killed him. You know, and so that happened in New Orleans. I was in line, and after 911, all these National Guard guys with their empty M16s are marching down the road. You know, all right, you know, got any weapons on? I said, hey, what do you call a weapon? He says, you know, knives, scissors. I said, what about pens and pencils? So I told him, I didn't hear about this guy, you know, that killed this FBI agent with a pencil. He said, well, we haven't gone that far yet. I said, well, can I ask you a question? He said, yeah. I said, if I ask you a question, will you tell me the truth? He said, yeah. I said, you got any ammo for that gun?
You know what you do with this?
He looks away. I said, come on, man. You said you'd tell me the truth. I said, you got any ammo for that gun? He says, well, no, but some of us do. I said, see that, folks? He's here for a show to make you think you're safe, but he hasn't got a bullet in that gun. You know, and that's the way they do things. You know, that's
one question. I want to go back to when you were in New Orleans. You were back in New Orleans and you're going through the TSA checkpoint and whatnot. And you got done with, I guess, the female officer that was checking you out, right? Am I correct? Did you get her phone number?
Yeah.
He brought her to that seminar.
That's why we love you.
Let me finish that story, Paul.
Yeah, oh my God, there's more.
In Greece, when I told that little girl, I said, you know, I could kill you with this pencil. She says, wait a minute. I said, oh, I screwed up. So she comes back with these two big gorillas. She said, come with us. So I said, okay. So we went in a little room. They damn near strip searched me, asked me all kinds of questions. So I told them, I said, hey, you guys know what I'm here for? Well, I'm here for telling the truth. If I would have lied and said, no, I don't have nothing, I would have been home free. But I told the truth and got raked over the coals. You understand?
Yes, I do, sir.
So
thank you so very much.
Keep your mouth shut. You know?
So, Mark, so let's do this. At this point, we've been talking for over an hour, and we've had a lot of things to talk about. I want to open up and introduce some people that are here so they can talk. One of the persons right off the bat, Marty and Mr. Planas, is I have with me Derek Heaven is here. Derek, please unmute yourself and say hello.
Hello, gentlemen. Uncle Huk, Marty, my brother.
Hey, good, brother. How are you, Derek?
See Uncle Huk?
Hi, Uncle Huk.
I'm well. I'm here with Coey. I got a boot on. I hurt my leg, but other than that, doing the best that we can. It's great to see you both. Love and miss you both. Uncle Huk, we wish you were here. Gosh, Marty, I haven't seen you in forever, brother. It's so good. It's good to see you. It's good to.
Yeah. Big hug, brother. Big hug.
I know. This has been great, and hearing the stories and. Uncle Huk, we love you. We miss you. I know Dad's on here. He's been watching and sends his best to the entire community and especially you guys. We love you all. Paul, thank you so much for all that you've been doing and in this series. It's been not only informative but a walk down memory lane for I know a lot of us. So full salute. Thank you. We love you guys and hope to see you sooner than later.
Thank you, Derek. God bless you. And we're going to move on to Mr. Duffy. Brian Duffy, say hello to
Us.
Planas. Hello, Marty. How you guys doing? You know,
Good. How are you, Mr. Duffy?
You know, it's wonderful hearing you guys talk. I haven't seen either of you in a long time, and you know, just enjoying spending some time digitally with you guys. Wish we could spend some time together. You know?
Absolutely.
Want to credit Mr. Planas. Had done some seminars with him years ago. He was at my camps. He was at the camp that the American Kempo Senior Council got started with Mr. LaBounta, Mr. Kelly, Mr. Trejo, who are all gone now. And very fortunate to have had some interaction with him during that time, and value the time I've had with him.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Mr. Duffy. Let's move over here and get Wes Hibben. Wes, are you there? Say hello to everybody.
Hello, how you doing, Uncle Huk and Marty? How you doing?
Hey, Wes, how are you?
I'm doing excellent.
Awesome.
I'm tired of this. Looking forward to getting back in working out with the person instead of just off videos, but it's been good because I've had Uncle Huk's videos to go off and finally getting 6 down.
Awesome.
So, but I don't have any questions for you guys. I miss you, and hopefully I get to see you in September as normal, Huk.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Wes. Let's go to Todd Durgan. How you doing, Todd?
I'm curious.
Where are you?
Actually, I loved the way you put. Well, the way Mr. Zaninovich, I love the way you put the information about the weapons techniques in the system and their actual overall value with regards to application to weapons. So I thought that was great. That was going to be one of my questions, but you covered it as always, Paul. You do a great job with these. So,
well, Todd, let's not stop with that. Why don't you get a lot of kudos for some of your work and regarding the universal pattern, and we've discussed a little bit about the weapons and techniques that are in the original system. They haven't really, there's nothing been added to that, just variations, different options, and things like that. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so, with regard to the weapons, I mean, I totally agree with these guys have been doing it, and they've been at it for a long time. One of the things that I've done is incorporate more of the the Collier Nice training modules, such as, the HUBUD, stuff like that, to help with reflex and dexterity, but to also look at more realistic. For example, in class just the other night, you were talking about the grabbing hand followed by the stabbing hand, and that's exactly what we focused on. We said, okay, likely the initial action is going to be the reach for the grab. The knife's going to be somewhere else, and then they're going to come with that knife, in a more concealed fashion. And so we're going to immediately deal with the grabbing hand or immediately deal with an eye strike, whatever. But, I've looked at the weapons techniques pretty much the same way for a lot of years with regard to, your reaction time is so limited with a weapon.
Absolutely.
And all you have to do is watch some of those actual Filipino guys fighting with sticks, those CIA type Filipino guys. And I mean, they're full on whacking each other. Watch a Dog Brothers video or anything like that. You don't have checking the storm time to go into defense for a club.
Well, we also know that in theory, everything is perfect in a theory. When you go to some people call it the ideal phase. I was taught the base move. But but one of the things that I learned and developed over the time is that we obviously have height, width, and depth, obscurity, these principles and concepts. But one of the things I always push hard on is, besides the awareness of your surroundings, is distance and time, or time and distance. If you have that, it will give you maybe that second that you might need to breathe again. Because if not, you're going to be caught off guard. And like most of these attacks, these guys are like hyenas. They're going to come at you when you least expect it. They're going to usually be in a pack, because that's the mindset of a lot of these people. And you just have to be around, worry about your surroundings. What are your thoughts on that, Marty?
I agree with what the thoughts are on the attacks. The attacks are going to come more stealth than anything. And I trained with the Dog Brothers for about 2.5 years with Mark Denny. So and there's nothing nice about it. It's hard, it's fast, and it hurts like the dickens when he gets hit with that big old stick. And they're not very forgiving. I believe when they do come, they're going to try to zone. The normal person that's going to utilize a knife is going to get close to you. He's going to plunge you. He'll either grab out. They say, 60, 70% of the time that lead hand is your zoning hand and your gauging hand to start setting up that plunge. If a guy's going to wave it out in front of you, he probably really doesn't want to stick you with it, but he will. But you can't underestimate, their intent. They're under a sense of urgency to get in there and get out of there before the cops come, before somebody comes, before somebody happens to them. They want to get it done. Now, that doesn't prove true in like a sexual assault or that type of deal. That's a different game on that. But
right.
It's a different ball game.
Can I just add one thing to your distance and timing? And I would say the one most valuable thing that you can add to that would be angle. If you can create an angle, or what you might be referring to as zoning, Mr. Zaninovich. But
absolutely, that's what I mean.
Timing, distance, and angle. If you create the proper angle of, defense, whatever you want to call it, then you give yourself another opportunity for those precious moments in time where you can do something effective.
Absolutely. I think if you look at the zoning of, we call it zoning, and it's the same thing, changing angles. We angle off. We're constantly utilizing the triangular footwork. If you would think when they're coming, if you zone towards 9 o'clock, 9 o'clock is a good way to go because you're going to be going up the circle and you're going to get away from that backup weapon with that left hand coming at you. And you have to monitor, immediately what could happen with that right hand and take it for granted that there is a weapon there.
Right.
In all my years in the martial arts, which is not that many as you guys, but
you have gray hair. You got some gray hair there.
That's called lighting. That's called lighting.
Those are the ones he missed with the dye.
Actually, it's funny. Heather asked me, "Do you dye your hair still?" I said, "No." He says, "Oh, you must have good DNA." I know. I just haven't hung around with you long enough to lose it all. So
thanks.
With Trejo was always strongly advocating footwork and angling, and because he was looking at it from a boxer's perspective, and he would always say, if they're linear, you're circular. If they're circular, you're linear. But you need to be able to move and get out of the way, because generally when they commit themselves, they're going to probably go at you directly. They're not going to cut off and try to shoot across. That isn't as effective unless he's throwing something. But generally, they're going to move towards you. The position that you're talking about, footwork and everything, is essential, because once that he makes that commitment, then you have a response. You've got him going in a direction. Hopefully, that will be just enough to get you in. And that's really important. What are your thoughts on that, Marty?
Well, I'm a big fan of what we call it zoning, and I'm just going to relate to it as zoning since we started there. Absolutely. It's the reading of the situation. It's the ability. And if you start anticipating it, I think you're going to be looking for a little bit of trouble there instead of reacting to it and flowing with the energy coming at you. We always say, take the energy coming and redirect it back to them and eliminate the threat. And I'm in agreement with that. You want to be able to read what's coming on, but you got to be savvy, and you have to pressure test what you're doing, at all times. I mean, it's a perishable art that we do. And in our minds, as we get older, we still think of the things that we could do, when we're 20 years old doing jump spinning hook kicks and God only knows what else there. But we have to be real about what our weak points are with our strong points, within our strong points.
Well, while we've been just talking about that, I'm going to ask Huck. Huck, I've unmuted you. Can you hear me, sir? Sir, can you hear me?
Is he back?
Yeah, he's back. I'm looking right at him. Mr. Planas, how are you?
You got me?
Yeah, we got you. Marty, why don't you bring him up to speed on what we were talking about?
I'm back.
Steve, were you there?
All right. We got us down here in Florida, and that's what the problem is.
Well, they just ordered a steak barbecue. They wanted to know how your steak was getting done so they can get it delivered to you, but you missed it. So
did they provide the scotch too? I just want to know. Don't worry. When you come to Las Vegas, sir, I have a bottle waiting for you. While we're on the subject and we have him here, I'm going to unmute Dennis Knatzer.
Yeah, all right.
And he is here to throw some gasoline on the fire. Mr. Knatzer, say hello to Mr.
Hi, Huck and Marty. You know, you guys kind of skirted around what I talked to Huck to Paul about a lot. I think the techniques, as Huck says, we we violate a lot of things. Divert, seize, control, disarm, so on and so forth. The 6 does hardly any of that, and when you do it, it's got to be just absolutely perfect. And we are assuming that the technique is a very simple technique. It's a straight thrust. It's not a machine gun thrust. It's not, so on and so forth. So there's a lot of things. But the thing I think I would remind everybody is the way I approach it is the techniques in the system are pretty basic, particularly when it comes to the knives. I mean, they're probably the most dangerous. The guns, knives, and clubs, and I think they're basically drills to develop skills. And the thing is that you got to start someplace. So you start with this pretty simple technique. However, in reality, you have to really jump into variable expansion. You got to get Todd Durgan's charts, and you got to go out there and you got to learn how to off angle, to move up. You got to learn how to move up the circle. You got to learn how to zone, as you say, Marty, and then you got to have quick hands and you got to have quick feet. Maneuvering is critical. Then you got to be able to control what's coming at you. You got to be able to read your opponent, and you got to anticipate, and you got to assume it's not just one stab or plunge, but maybe multiples. And the knife techniques and stuff really get challenging. I think the funnest part I ever had working with knives is to get magic markers and give everybody a different color, and have each have 2 people come together and fight with different color markers, and have a white T-shirt on, and you'd be surprised. I came out looking like a piece of Swiss cheese.
That's so true. I use 2 knives. They call them no-lie blades, and we put lipstick around the edge of it. And it accomplishes the same thing you're saying. And you're so right. And that's why I say it's knife awareness, because with the knife, it's not forgiving. It's not forgiving at all. And you start looking at, like you stated too, wound management. If it gets to a critical point, you're only going to be able to manage a couple major, cuts in your arteries. If not, you're going to bleed out, depending on how much adrenaline's running in your body. A lot of factors there. Totally agree.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, there's some human anatomy and physiology you got to work on. You got to try to protect your vital areas and expose your opponents as best as possible. And like Mr. Parker says, we talk about whose technique is more correct. It's not who's right. It's who's left.
That's right.
And
that's correct.
And the knife and guns, they're very, unforgiving. I mean, the club, you can kind of, maybe manage a little bit. You come out with some strong dents. As Mr. LaBounta would say, rest his soul.
Yep.
But I mean, that's how I kind of approach those things. And I mean, out of the 4 gun techniques, and I think 5 or 6 knife techniques we have, there's a lot of variable expansion that needs to be worked on those, and a lot of practice. But they do serve as a simple, and I mean very simple base to start with. I mean, I talked to Mr. Parker about that, and it's always fun. I saw him once in a seminar. Somebody challenged to work on a technique, and it might have been glancing lance or something, and he said, well, wait, what about this? And can't the opponent do this and then the other? And of course, then he'd get that little gleam in his eye, and then he'd come back, and then he'd start showing off, and then you really start seeing some of the technique, and it's nothing like the basic technique. He took the basic technique, and then he just went to town Leon, and he took some of Robert Temple's moves and just put a knife in both hands. All of a sudden, each one of his fingers had a blade on it, and you're just ripped to shreds, right, Robert? And so he was just incredible with what he did. So he liked to challenge. When somebody challenged him, that's the best way to learn something, to say, Mr. Parker, I don't really think glancing lance will work. Really? Okay, well, let's look at it this way, And so they really are. There's a great difficulty in doing the basic tech, and too many people look at them as the rules. And I don't know how many times people can tell them these aren't rules, these are ideas, and they're good starter ideas. They're certainly not end results. We have no techniques in the system for slashes. We have no techniques in the system for machine gun plunges. And so if you take the basic techniques and think you're a master black belt at whatever number of stripes you got, it's best to wear a white belt at that point, because otherwise you're going to be embarrassed.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I saw that at the academy. I mean, time and time again, there were some people that came through there. My first experience with a true seminar down there was with Tuhangahi. And that guy's phenomenal with a knife. He has more knives on him than the knife shops carry. And the ability to utilize them, you're right. They're like a mix master going through you, and you are going to get cut and killed, more than likely.
Let's bring in Robert Temple. Robert, are you there? Mr. Temple, are you there? We're unmuting you. Hey, there he is. Smiles. How you doing, buddy?
I'm good, man. Great conversation. And
you have say hello to Marty and Huk.
Hey, how you doing, sir? It's good to meet you finally, at least at a distance, and hopefully I have the opportunity to meet you in person at some point in time. But,
likewise, Mr. Temple.
Great information. And every time we get on this topic of knife fighting, Paul, I mean, this stuff, it just perks my ears up. This is some real deal stuff that you can't play with. You have to be real.
You have to be real.
Absolutely. We took that from last week. Thank you so much, Robert. It's good to see you, brother. Let's go to Mr. Garcia. Mr. Garcia, hello. How are you, sir? Are you there? Can you say hello to Mr. Planas?
Hey, how are you? Hi, Jackie.
Hi. Doing great. I've heard some of these stories before, but I always enjoy hearing this stuff, and I have a lot of family on here, so I really appreciate you putting this together. This has been great.
Well, we appreciate your in. You have a question for either of these gentlemen?
I do not. I am just ears open, trying to take it all.
They have plenty on the mat. Trust me, they're always asking, and they're great questions.
Let's go to Rodolfo. How you doing, sir? Are you there? Are you there?
Sir.
Yeah, say hello to.
Hello, everybody. Mr. Capone, Mr. Casey, thank you for invitation. Mr. Zaninovich, I see the last year is enjoyed your move, your style. Mr. Huk, hello. I'm fascinated to all the story.
It was great working with you down in Chile. Enjoyed seeing you.
Thank you.
Let's go with Andreas. How you doing, sir?
Yes. Hi, everyone.
Why don't you say hello to our guest?
Oh, very good. Hello, Marty.
Hey, Andres.
What I talk about is it's very good experience for me. Have two big brother. You are my big brother in the art. It's a pleasure for me learn for you.
Well, thank you so much. We appreciate you being a part of this. Let's go to Matt. Hey, Max. How you doing, sir? Say hello. Well, you know these gentlemen, but why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and say hello.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hey, it's dark in there.
Yeah,
it's too dark in there.
He's in the dungeon.
Don't you do that.
Yeah, I know both of these gentlemen for a long time. Too long sometimes.
Yeah, too long.
But it's great to see everybody here. Thanks for putting this on, and the rest of our boys, and Miz getting together and doing this for real. We should have been in Sweden a few weeks ago, and but it's okay. We will soon enough, and this is what we do all the time, and eat.
Yeah, that's good.
Hey, Max, can you bring up anything that really stood out in all the times that you've been with these two men on seminars? Something that really jumps out at you?
Well, something I always learned both from Sifu and from Marty is not only how to do stuff, but how to teach it, because they're both phenomenal instructors. And, there's many times when I like to just sit in the corner and watch what they do. And it's not only what they do, technique-wise, but also how they handle questions, how they approach, how they respond, how they make people think. That kind of observation, I think, makes me a better instructor as well, because just like Mr. Parker used to say, there's 3 points of view, the attacker, the defender, and the bystander. I learn a lot watching how to teach. as well as how to do the art, you know, from being around them. You know,
what would be the best lesson you've learned from them?
How to think. I mean, how to have an open mind, how to think. You know, as I always tell people, Sifu never taught us what to, in the sense, how we have to do stuff. He just showed us, made us understand, made us think, and then he said, there's no wrong way of doing it as long as you do it right. So, I'm very grateful for that because, many people say, oh, you have to do it my way, you have to do it this way, whereas, you really get an ability to express yourself, to learn, to explore the art. And I mean, I think that's been, that's why I got attracted to the lineage and I stayed with it ever since, because it's your own, creativity, because I always tell people it's going to be you in a fight, nobody else. Nobody cares ultimately who your teacher is or who you trained with. You have to fight for yourself. So being able to do the art for yourself. And that's something I try to instill in my students as well.
Thank you, Max. Really appreciate you jumping in. It's good to see you.
Likewise.
Thank you for your participation. We look forward to hearing more from you in the near future. Welcome to the Kempo Karate Hall of Fame, Mr. Rebello. How you doing? What do you have to say there, Joseph?
Did I win the most interesting background contest?
It definitely is.
It's
very
my
busy.
name on my shirt so people would know who I was.
Okay, just making sure. How you doing?
Doing good. I thought I typed in Kempo. Listen, I'm a Zoom newbie, folks, so please bear with me.
No worries. Why don't you say hello to Huk and Marty for us?
Huk, it's always a pleasure. And Marty, we've never met.
I've never met.
I've never met Marty. Opportunity.
I look forward to it. Salute you.
I have.
Maybe we have.
So, I was listening to you guys talk about knives, and I was listening to you talk about Kempo knives, and I got something recently I wanted to share, because especially when somebody mentioned glancing lance and when Dennis mentioned about glancing lance and Mr. Parker's eyes lighting up. And, that technique, I mean, it's such an important technique because we do it at the end of 6. We purposely do that hand isolation. And the reason why, it's because Mr. Parker had 2 encounters where guys really tried to get him with a knife or knife-like object. And that first action here, he was at I'll never forget the story. He was at the Beverly Hills Athletic Club with Tony Robinson, and he was teaching there. And a guy walked up to him, and he had one of these, a metal rat tail comb. This is the 1950s when this was going on. So he pulled it in his hand. He was holding it in his right hand. He's got his arm like he's got a jacket wrap. Says, well, what if I came in? And he went to stick Mr. Parker without a moment of hesitation. He did the first move from glancing lance, stepped off and kicked him full blast in the groin. And the guy immediately dropped the weapon. He's clutching his crotch. He looks up at him and points at him and goes, "That's dirty fighting." And Mr. Parker looks down at him and says, I'm sorry, were you going to sterilize that blade before you stuck me with it? And, so this technique and this technique were actually actual attacks he dealt with against people with knives. And that's why he made it an integral part of the system. And it was fascinating when I was talking to him about this. And then one day I found one of these bad boys and it made my life. But,
yeah, but it doesn't look like it help you out right now.
Grateful. Huh?
I said, Joseph, I don't think that's going to help you right now.
I like toys. Happy.
Okay.
Anybody who knows me, man, ask AC Rainey. He's in the room, man. You go to my place, it's like Toys R Us. I love.
There was a little more to it. Marty caught it. Okay, good. So
he's got a mustache he can comb.
Absolutely.
Hey, not my fault. Okay, not my fault.
Joseph, thank you so much. I love it.
Anyway.
You're very spirited. God bless you. Thank you so much.
Bet.
It was a pleasure. Let's go to Kempo phone. I'm going to hook him up right here. Unmuted. There you go, sir. How are you? Welcome to the Kempo Karate Hall of Fame. And why don't you say hello? Are you there?
Hello, Mr. Zaninovich. Hello, Mr. Planas.
Hi, Kim. How are you?
It's nice to hear from both of you, and yeah, looking forward to being back on the mat with both of you and with Max also. So yeah, nice to be a part of this, and yeah. just glad to see everybody is staying safe and at good health. So
why don't you
Good,
tell
thank
everybody
you.
where you're from, okay? Because a lot of us
I am
haven't
from.
met you. So I'm sorry.
No, I live in Copenhagen, Denmark. Yeah. Some of the guys has met me and seen me and yeah, known me for a lot of years and yeah, I've been chatting online with some of the different people here. I mean, I chat with Joe LaBella a couple of times. So yeah.
Thank you so much. Let's go on to Claudio. Claudio, are you there? Hello, sir. Say hello to everybody. Unmute yourself.
Hey, hello. How are you? Hello, thank you. Hello, Huk. Hey, Marty. How are you?
Hey, Claudio. How are you?
Hey, big brother. Hey, and all of my Kempo brothers to Belinach, Kim, Max. Very nice. It's a very good. And thank you, Paul, for your invitation. Very interesting conversation about the system, about the history. I'm very glad part of this. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Let's
Good
move
seeing
on
you,
right
Claudio.
here and go to. I'm looking at hitting Steve Orsino. Are you there, Mr. Orsino? Why don't you say hello to everybody?
Hey, where are you at? Are you having a
Great talk, you guys. And Marty, I just wondered if you would prefer this weapon.
You know, my first encounter with that little beautiful butterfly knife when I was learning it, Huk was teaching me, and I'm going to share a little story. He told me, he says, flip the blade around so the blade's going to hit your hand. You know, he said, I want you working that wrist a lot more so you snap it out there. So I was on my way to my mom and dad's for Sunday dinner, or lunch, I should say. And I was whipping that thing out, and I was feeling pretty good about what he taught me. You know, then I closed it, and I started driving, and I felt something warm on my hand. And I looked down, I sliced my hand wide open. I had to go to the hospital, got stitches, and I called up Mr. Planas. I said, hey, I said, you told me to work the blade backwards. He says, yeah, I forgot to tell you to put tape on the blade.
Oh, my.
Well, so, now, to be honest, I've done that before too. So my version is this one.
I love it. I love it.
Much safer.
Yes, I agree. I agree.
Steve, any comments? Any comments, Steve, or any questions for either of the gentlemen?
No, not really. You guys covered it real well.
I was gonna interject something. This is Dennis. If you're gonna work the blade, Marty, you got to learn how to kill the blade so it doesn't come back into your hand.
No kidding. Hey, well, I killed it all right.
So you know, when I was learning that, you learn how to stop it short, with your hand movement. Thus the term "kill the blade." Which, if people don't know how to do that, then it's probably a foreign term. But I had several slices when I was learning the butterfly knife when I first got them.
Yeah, I think if you don't get sliced, you're not really pushing it to the max on that. After I had about 4 stitches put in my hand, I was okay. I was back at it again. A little smarter though.
Well, I was lucky. I had a full set of the originals. I had the stiletto. I had the Weehawk. I had, the stiletto was the hardest one.
Yes, absolutely.
Because
obviously you don't have a backbone on one to be able to rest on your knuckle. So,
yep.
But anyway,
let's move on. And Zach Carter. Zach, you want to say hello to Marty?
Hi, Zach.
Hey, Marty. Hey, how you doing? Great.
Good, brother. How about you? Good seeing you.
Good. Thank you. Great conversation today. Really enjoyed it. Paul and I talked a lot about that. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you.
You have a question for Marty?
If I was on the mat with him, I would like to play with some knife stuff. That's for sure. But
I'd be willing to accommodate.
Just Paul and I talk about the knife stuff all the time because I consider it probably the most dangerous weapon.
It is dangerous, no doubt.
So I really appreciate the conversation.
Zach, you know not what you ask when you confront Marty like that.
Oh, come on, Mr. Knetzer.
The dragon speaks. Thank you, sir.
We're going to wrap this thing up right now. I want to say thank you very much, Marty and Huk, for being a part of this, and everyone that got a chance to say hello. It is a pleasure to have you as part of the Kempo Karate Hall of Fame educational video series. so much more to learn. If you have any questions, I really suggest that you reach out to Marty or to Huk. And when you have a question, ask them directly, okay? And they'll answer those questions. Marty, thank you so very much. It's been truly
Thank you,
a
Paul.
pleasure.
Appreciate it.
And please extend my very best to Mr. Planas. I know he's here. And again, all the people that did contribute today, thank you so much. It's good to see everyone. And with no further ado, gentlemen, have a great weekend. Thank you so very much.
Great. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Paul. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. See you guys.
Okay. Take care. Looking forward to seeing you guys.
Good seeing you again, Marty.
Thank you. You too, Mr. Duffy.
Take care.
Take care.
Okay.